The sharp crack of my daughter's birthday cake hitting the floor echoed through the suddenly silent room. My 2-year-old Lucy's face crumpled as she stared at her ruined princess cake. Pink frosting splattered across the hardwood. Above her, my mother-in-law Fiona loomed, her face contorted with rage. "Disgusting, spoiled brat," she hissed, jabbing her finger inches from Lucy's face. "This is exactly why I can't stand children like you." My vision tunneled, the edges darkening as a wave of heat surged from my stomach to my throat. The champagne flute I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, shattering against the floor in perfect synchronization with something breaking inside me. The room seemed to tilt as I watched tears stream down my daughter's cheeks, her tiny body trembling in fear. Every maternal instinct ignited at once. I lunged forward, sweeping Lucy into my arms in one fluid motion, feeling her little heart pounding against mine. My free hand shot out, creating a physical barrier between my child and this woman who dared terrorize her. "She's 2 years old," I snarled, my voice barely recognizable even to myself. Across the room, my husband Parker stood frozen, his eyes darting between us with the panicked indecision of someone watching 2 trains about to collide. Fiona's mouth twisted into a cruel smile. "Worst grandchild ever," she spat, as though a toddler could possibly deserve such venom. "No wonder, with you as her mother." My name is Olivia. I'm 33 and an executive assistant. This is the story of how I reclaim my power after discovering the strongest family ties are the ones you choose to keep. Parker and I had met at a charity gala 4 years earlier. We dated for a year before getting married, and Lucy came along just 9 months after our wedding. He was charming, attentive, and seemed refreshingly independent for someone in his 30s. When Lucy was born, he became the hands-on father I'd always dreamed of having for my children. He changed diapers without complaint, took night feedings, and even insisted I sleep in on weekends. What I didn't realize was that his apparent independence was simply the temporary absence of the woman who'd controlled his entire life, his mother. The first warning signs appeared during our engagement. Whenever we discussed wedding plans, Parker would hesitate before responding. "I should probably run this by my mom," he'd say about everything from our venue to our honeymoon destination. I mistook this for respectful family involvement rather than the red flag it was. After Lucy's birth, the calls from Fiona increased. Every decision I made was scrutinized, questioned, then dismissed. "Breastfeeding? For how long? That seems excessive," she'd comment during our weekly video calls. Or, "She's sleeping in your room. That'll ruin your marriage faster than your cooking." I brushed off these remarks, attributing them to generational differences and outdated parenting philosophies. I didn't want to cause tension between Parker and his mother. That was my first mistake. 6 months ago, Parker came home with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of anxiety and forced enthusiasm. "Mom's moving in with us," he announced without preamble, staring at a point just past my shoulder. I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. "What?" "Why?" "Dad left her for his dental hygienist," he explained, his voice brittle. "She's devastated. Needs family support. And think about it. She can help with Lucy while you go back to work full-time." The practical benefits seemed compelling, and Parker assured me his mother thought highly of me. "She says you're the daughter she never had," he insisted, though I'd never heard her express anything remotely that affectionate. Within weeks, Fiona arrived with 7 suitcases and a seemingly permanent scowl. The moment Parker left for work that first morning, her demeanor transformed completely. She surveyed our living room with undisguised contempt. "This furniture is quite aspirational for someone at your level," she remarked, running a finger along our coffee table. "Excuse me," I said, nearly choking on my coffee. "Everything you have is because of my son," she said, voice suddenly sharp as a razor. "Don't ever forget that." I took a deep breath, reminding myself of her recent divorce. "We both work hard for what we have," I replied evenly. "At least you know your place," she said with a smirk. "That's something." From that moment forward, nothing I did was acceptable. My cooking was either bland or trying too hard. My parenting was constantly undermined. "Lucy needs a sweater. Are you trying to make her sick?" Even my personal habits were criticized. Who showers at night? No wonder you always look so disheveled. Meanwhile, Parker transformed in his mother's presence. My confident, reasonable husband became an anxious, approval-seeking child. "How's my special boy?" She'd coo at dinner, ignoring me completely. "Work was rough," he'd sigh. "The client rejected our initial proposal." "That's discrimination," she'd gasp dramatically. "Should I call your CEO? I play bridge with his wife." "Mom, please, it's just business," he'd mumble. "My precious son is too humble," she'd announce, clutching his arm like he'd invented gravity. To preserve my sanity, I enrolled Lucy in daycare 3 days a week and increased my hours at work. When I informed Fiona of this decision, she exploded. "Why are you abandoning your child? Don't I deserve some peace after everything I've been through?" "You'll have the house to yourself 3 days a week," I pointed out, maintaining a calm I didn't feel. "Fine," she huffed, "but this place better be spotless when I wake up." Which brings us back to Lucy's birthday party. As I held my sobbing daughter, something crystallized within me. The months of belittlement, the undermining of my authority, the transformation of my husband into a passive bystander in our marriage, it all converged into perfect clarity. "You will never speak to my daughter that way again," I said, my voice deadly quiet. Fiona's eyes widened in momentary shock before narrowing with contempt. "This is my son's house. I'll speak however I want." I turned to Parker, silently pleading for support. Finally, he stepped forward, and for one beautiful moment, I thought he was going to defend us. Instead, he placed his hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mom's right," he said softly. "You're overreacting." Lucy did knock over the cake. I stared at him, something inside me shattering at this final betrayal. "She's a baby, Parker." "Your baby." He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a physical blow. "We can have another kid. I only have one mother." The room went silent. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what the rest of my life would look like if I stayed. Endless subjugation to a woman who despised me and a husband who would always, always choose her. "Get out," Fiona suddenly demanded, pointing toward the door. "Both of you, now." I blinked, momentarily confused, then understanding dawned with sickening clarity. This house, my house, she already considered it hers. "Actually," I said, my voice suddenly steady, "I think you two should leave." Parker looked stunned. "What are you talking about? Where would we go?" "Not my problem," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. "But you have 30 minutes to pack essentials. The rest we can arrange later." Fiona laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You can't kick us out of Parker's house." I smiled then, feeling an odd sense of peace wash over me. "That's where you're wrong, Fiona. This isn't Parker's house." Parker's face paled. "What do you mean?" "I bought this house with my inheritance before we met," I explained, watching comprehension slowly dawn on his face. "Remember when I insisted we keep our finances separate? There was a reason for that." "You're lying," Fiona spat, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. I walked to my office, returned with a folder, and placed the property deed on the counter. 30 minutes, I repeated, and then I'm calling the police to remove trespassers. They left in 27 minutes, Fiona screeching about ingratitude, while Parker silently loaded their suitcases into his car. As they drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, the ability to breathe freely in my own home. 3 days later, I sat in my lawyer's office, ignoring the dozens of missed calls lighting up my phone. The preliminary divorce papers lay before me, terms carefully outlined to protect Lucy and my assets. When Parker finally reached me, he sounded desperate rather than angry. "We need to talk about living arrangements," he began, his voice unnaturally high. "Mom and I are in a hotel, and it's not sustainable." "I agree," I said pleasantly, "so I've prepared a rental agreement for the house." "What?" he sputtered. "I'm your husband." Soon-to-be ex-husband, I corrected. Market rate for a house this size is $3,200 monthly. For you, I'll make it $3,500. That's extortion, he shouted. No, that's capitalism, I replied, and there's a strict no Fiona clause in the agreement. Where is she supposed to live? He demanded, his voice cracking. Not my problem, I said, echoing his dismissive shrug from the party. But I hear the dental hygienist has a lovely spare room. I hung up, feeling a satisfaction so intense it bordered on euphoric. My lawyer later told me that Parker showed up to our first mediation session with deep shadows under his eyes and a nervous tic in his left cheek. Apparently, Hotel living with his mother had fractured their unbreakable bond in record time. She'd begun criticizing his income, his career choices, even his breathing patterns. My lawyer had watched their interactions in the waiting room and filled me in after our session. During our final settlement conference, I watched through the conference room window as they argued in the hallway, repeatedly hissing, "This is all your fault," at each other like actors in a particularly melodramatic play. Meanwhile, I rented out the house for a substantial monthly income, secured Lucy's future with a robust college fund, and moved into a charming condo closer to my parents. Now I work 4 days a week, spend quality time with my daughter, and sleep peacefully without midnight criticisms or the weight of constant disapproval. 6 months after that fateful birthday party, the divorce was finalized. I received full custody of Lucy, with Parker getting supervised visitation twice a month, a schedule he rarely manages to keep as his mother usually needs him on those weekends. The court recognized his pattern of prioritizing his mother over his child's well-being, which worked in my favor during custody negotiations. As for love, maybe someday. But first, I'm focusing on the most important relationship in my life, the one with my daughter. And I've made a solemn promise that I'll never allow anyone to make either of us feel small again. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.